in some ways, I was sort of hoping he'd give me a loan. But instead, he showed me where I was mismanaging my money and said, "Go fix it yourself."
Way better than a loan.
Way better. Teach a man to fish.
Like,
yes,
I love it. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on the Lifeguard Show. I'm Jason, and today we are cultivating wisdom from mistakes like we always do. And my guest is my friend Dave Duffield. If you haven't heard of Dave Duffield, he is with We Are Leo, musical artist, has #1 song on Christian rock radio, had their music featured in major motion pictures on television, and over 250 million views in the Dude Perfect videos, which they've had some of their songs, I think 7 songs in Dude Perfect videos, viewed a lot of times. Anyone with an 8 to 12-year-old son probably knows who Dude Perfect is. If you don't, you can Google it and find out. But we've got lots of good stuff. Thanks for following us. Thanks for watching or listening. Let's get into it with David Duffield. But you did ask Kendra, your wife, for permission to do the show. Or maybe permission isn't the right word. But you discussed...
We made it
because you've become a new father a year and a bit ago.
Yes.
And that changed some direction or activity, maybe is better. What did you start doing differently?
Having a baby, yeah. I mean, I think I have to be more intentional with my time. And it's funny, we heard someone say, like it was like a meme or something, and he was like, before I had kids, what was I thinking? Why didn't I get more things done? So I think it's gradually working up, like, what can you cut out? Like, Essentialism is a great book, and we've talked about that, and it's trade-offs. And it's like, the TV time is way down for us, and it feels good, and so it's like, we're recording this at night. Like at night, I used to watch TV because if you do this all day, you can't just go all day with being in the studio or recording. You do need a break. So it's sort of like finding that 3 hours or that 2 hours within a day, whether it's nap time or at night, where you can try to do something productive. And so that means trade-offs, whether that's just leisure or TV or whatever.
Talk more about that, because you talked about, what were we talking about? Oh, all right. So you are in a band and you wear a lot of hats. You were talking about trade-offs as far as the roles or we were talking about merchandise.
Where
I said, hey, you just did a show. Did you bring merchandise along? And you said, no, I decided to not do the merch thing right now because it came back to essentialism again.
Right.
What was that thought process and what was your decision?
He talked about, and I'm not sure if it was the same book, but he was talking to a guy and he said, you can either build a big company with lots of employees or you can do ideas, in which case you might have 2 or 3 employees, or, it's lots of different examples of an airline trying to do a split strategy. And what I realized for me is I could either do merch and be on tour and just sort of keep that going, or I could really write songs. And I felt like what the contribution I wanted to make was to write songs. And that was the trade-off that I felt like I would make. Like, I wanted to leave people with music. That's what I cared about the most. And I just didn't have capacity to do merch and tour manage and be a mechanic. And we switched over to renting. And I sat down with a business guy from my church, and he said, well, how much do you think you're saving by having your own vehicle? And we crunched the numbers. He's like, these rental companies, I can't remember what the percentage was, but he went through what percentage that they're actually making. And it wasn't a huge percentage. And so for me, again, that trade-off of time, when I was always at the mechanic between tour, to like, okay, now I'm just going to tell him what the cost of the show is plus the rental, and that cost doesn't even have to be on me. If someone doesn't want to book us for what it costs to bring us plus the rental, and that saves my mental space instead of thinking, well, I don't know how much I'm going to make because what about brakes, what about tires?
Right.
Like, I don't have this, I'm a songwriter, and so since I've stopped trying to be a tour manager, mechanic, merch designer. Now I can put all my energy, theoretically, into focusing on being a songwriter, because that's what I want to do. I want to produce music. I want to write songs, and then maybe that's something that will last.
So you made the choice to get rid of the things that you weren't good at, didn't love,
hated,
in fact, to intentionally devote time to what you are good at, what
Yes.
you enjoy doing,
Yes.
what brings you energy and life.
Yes.
And that's a valuable lesson
Yeah.
to learn, I think.
Yeah.
So let me ask you about, you said you sat down with a business guy at your church.
Yes.
And you've mentioned to me in a number of conversations in the last few days since we've been hanging out of mentors in your life. And you have also become a mentor to some younger guys. So that seems to be very important to you. Why is that?
Why is it important? Mentors, that's a great question. I mean, and thanks for bringing that up. I mean,
so that specific example of your truck breaking down, you had questions to try and get things better.
well,
Get rid of this frustration in you.
yes, to some degree. I mean, in some ways, I was sort of hoping he'd give me a loan. But instead, he showed me where I was mismanaging my money and said, "Go fix it yourself."
Way better than a loan.
Way better. Teach a man to fish.
Like,
Yes.
I love it.
My whole life got way better when I started renting for touring. And then 2020 hit. Because I was like, hey, how do I get to a loan to get a Sprinter?
A brand new vehicle. I don't have to worry about.
Right. $80,000, $90,000. And then 2020 hit. And I'm so glad that I took his advice and just started renting, because then I don't have this car payment hanging over my head when I'm not allowed to tour. And so that was really wise and really helpful. And I think because of the business model, it's like I don't have to take show. And that's what we were trying to go to, is like I don't want to have to be on the road for this thing to work. Like, I want to be able, if I want to spend a month in the studio, originally it wasn't about having a kid. It was just about not having to be on the road all the time, because I wanted to write music. And then I found in 2020 that I could do that. Like, oh, we're making ends meet. I'm at home just writing, and that's kind of the zone I want to be in anyway. But circling back to the mentors thing.
Yes.
I think it's something I've always craved, I guess. I don't know that it sort of feels intuitive to me that I want people in my life. And I don't, maybe even at times for me to an unhealthy degree, where at times I need to just trust my intuition and my instinct.
Instead of getting someone to confirm what you're thinking, I have this idea, I need someone to tell me it's a good plan.
Yeah, probably. I think there's a balance with it. And I think it is instinctive to me. It's just about finding the right people. But I do think there is a wisdom in that. And it talks all through the Proverbs about look, a fool doesn't listen to advice. And what I appreciate about you the other night is I was saying something, and even in front of people, where at a dinner party, you just were like, hey, bro, this is how this is hitting us. You just called me out. And it's like, wounds from a friend can be trusted. And I think we need so much more of that in our culture. And to be attuned to well, am I being too intense? Yeah, you are, bro. And that's helpful.
Right.
Once you get to the security level, I guess, of being able to realize.
Receive it?
Yeah, well, I think it's, because people talk about pride. I don't know exactly if it's pride. I think it's confidence in yourself, that you can miss a shot in a sense. I can miss a shot and I'm not kicked off the team. You love hockey or whatever. Great people miss shots. So take shots. And so I think when someone comes at you and says, yeah, don't buy a truck, that's bad, and also I'm not giving you a loan, you should do it like this, and they're a good business person, instead of being like, oh, I'm an idiot. It's like, I heard it said like this too. It's like, if you get overwhelmed when you compare yourself to people who are doing good, or a mentor or something, because that's a lot of times that's why you don't want to get advice, right? Because it feels overwhelming.
I'm not there yet. He's better than me. He's got it all figured out.
Yes, it's like, I'm not to where I want to be yet. So can I see that gap as a good thing? Like, oh, this person's coming at me. Well, I already know that I'm not where I want to be.
Right.
So I should actually say, maybe that's why my relationships are bad, because other people think I'm being too intense and they just didn't say it. So, this is helpful information. Instead of thinking, this dude, what does he think he's telling me? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Starting to embrace that mentality of, hey, I already know what I know, but what does this guy know? And then, we were talking about that today in the car of like wrestling. Like, Israel means wrestles with God. And the point that I was making was, I think sometimes, taking input from other people, whether that's your wife, saying, hey, can you do this? Or, hey, you need to improve in this area. And being able to hear that and not let that define you. Because she might be right, but she also might not be. And same for a pastor or a mentor or anybody in your life, they might be right. And chances are it's somewhere in the middle.
Sure.
Between your opinion and theirs.
Sure.
However, people can go to the thing of just like, oh, if my wife's telling me I'm not good, like I'm not good. And sometimes you have to take it in and then you have to wrestle with it. Is this true? Is my thing true? Am I being lazy or am I overworking? Oh, this guy tells me I'm being lazy. This guy tells me I'm overworking. Where is it? And you have to wrestle.
Right.
Until you kind of, there's this resonance, I think, in yourself where you hear God's voice saying, we were talking about the juxtaposition of what Jesus said to Mary, which was like, sit at my feet.
Mary and Martha.
Yeah, Mary and Martha. It's like, hey, she's telling me to come help her, blah, 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 blah. Like, and Jesus is like, no, sit at my feet. So he might be saying to you, no, sit down, put away the pots and pans, the people who are telling you you're not working hard enough, and sit there and rest, Sabbath. Or you might be Peter, and he's like, no, come out on that boat. I'm scared. No, step out in the water. I want more from you. Come on, let's go. But which one is it? And I think that's the wrestle of like, anytime someone's saying something to you, you kind of got to take it in and within the word of God, balance that of what's God speaking to me within this. Because it's not always going to be exactly what someone else is saying to you, but it might be a pointer.
Right. And it might be at a time, it may be sit and rest. And at another time, it might be get up and come walk on the water, depending on what's going on. You said the gap when you're talking about mentors and you're here and you want to get here.
Yes.
And we talked about this a little bit the other day someone said it to me, the difference between the gap and the gain. So the gap is between where you are and where you want to be, but the gain is from where you are and where you were 10 years ago.
Right.
And I often, and I think many people do, is say, hey, this guy is ahead of me. I'm not there yet. I'm working towards it. Well, also look in the rearview mirror and see the gains that sometimes people that are trying to achieve more don't look back and say, hey, I've got an album. I've got a bunch of songs now. I've done some things. I've made an online course. And we're moving from step to step to step.
Yes.
And if we don't take the time to recognize that, I think we're living like, oh, I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. So if that's balance, I don't know what it is. Yeah, we got to look back sometimes and say, hey, you know what? You've done some good stuff. Look at the gain. Yes. Don't always look at the gap.
100%.
And try.
I mean, that's so true for me. And that's a constant battle for me, is to remember that. And I think I heard the quote one time that was saying, it's about what you've overcome, not just what you've achieved in comparison, because everybody's starting from a different place and starting from the battles that they face. And it's like, well, this guy did this. Well, he might have just done that naturally. If you overcome something and it's really hard and you make a minor gain, what might look a minor gain
to the outside or
to the social media or to your bank account or whatever, but if to you had to overcome something, addiction, childhood trauma, parent wound, whatever it is, like bad theology, weird church, whatever it is, self-doubt, and perfectionism, like whoa, I created something and I put it out there.
Big overcome.
It's and judging it more from what you've overcame versus the straight numbers, popularity, money that our culture might.
The metrics that get looked at.
So I think that's tying into like, and this is sort of tying back to what I was saying about the wrestle and judging yourself by if you're giving your best effort, because only you can decide that. Do you know what I mean? Like,
right.
The numbers, the money, your spouse might not point exactly. You might be giving a half effort and be killing it.
Right.
And everybody's like, you're awesome.
You're great.
But you're not even giving 100%. Or you might be really giving an effort and people might not notice yet because you're still overcoming things and growing. And I think that's why it's so important to be tuned in here first and foremost. If I go out and be authentic and give my best, and I was even thinking about this on stage last night. And this is something I stole from Brene Brown, but she says, look, if you make it your goal to be authentic, then you'll be all right. If you make it your goal that people like you and they don't, you're screwed. And so like when I step on stage, I have to make it my goal just to be my best. Can I love people? Can I give? Can I sing to the best of my ability? And then I have to take it or leave it whether they like me.
Right. Hey, thanks for joining us today. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love it if you'd subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, subscribe to the podcast, like it, share, review, do all the things you're supposed to do. We really appreciate it. We want to keep making great content and learning from our mistakes, getting wisdom. Thanks so much. See you next time.